Hey, sports card collectors and investors. I hope everybody is having a great Thursday morning. Sorry, I couldn't get the lighting quite right, so it looks like, again, it's like a Blair Witch Project effect going on. I've got like the dark side of the moon over here. But anyway, I'm just going to go with it. So here we are. But I'm going to talk today about some mistakes that I made in the beginning when sports card investing. Some of these are going to be kind of obvious. Maybe some will be new that you haven't heard before. But it's something to where I think that excitement and emotion drives a lot of this because we're all sports addicts or we should be. I think if we're involved in this, you should really be interested in sports. And for me, this has been an extension, not even just before all the season stopped, but for me it was how can I get closer to these players, and it goes all the way back to childhood, and sports cards is kind of an extension of that for sports fans in general. So this is just an extension of our deep obsession with sports, I think, or at least it is for me anyway. So, but that's going to start off kind of my first. The first topic I'm going to talk about is just emotions. So when we're buying, and I think that part of the issue too is there's so much inventory. And now there's so many different sports too. I mean, I had people reaching out to me like, hey, have you gotten into soccer cards yet? Have you gotten into tennis cards yet to get ahead of, people that, investors that are looking to get into those cards? And I was looking at them like, man, I was looking at a bunch of actually Messi and Ronaldo soccer cards. And I wanted to pull the trigger because I got all excited about it. I watched a couple of other content creators make videos. And I'm like, man, I'm missing the boat here. I got to get in on this and see what's going on. And I'm not a massive soccer fan, but I do enjoy soccer. I love watching World Cup. I follow Premier League to some extent. And so I was looking at Messi and Ronaldo, and of course they've got great looking cards. And I almost bought, I was like just about to, pull the trigger, on some of these cards. I'm thinking like, I don't know anything about these cards. I don't know anything about the sets. I can't just assume that, there's crossover. I mean, there probably is crossover as far as popularity, as far as like Prism and Select and things like that go to the soccer cards, but I literally know nothing. I'm making a very reactive decision based off of a couple of other videos that I watched, which were great videos, great information, but I'm thinking like, let me just take a step back, put some hours into this, figure out, what's what, where I want to put my resources, if I even want to put my resources into it. We can kind of go from there. So emotion drives a lot of it, and a lot of it is the collecting versus investing piece that we always talk about. We're all a hybrid of this to some degree. Some of us are 90% investment, 10% collection. Some of us are 50-50, but we all have some sort of hybrid element of collecting versus investing, or we wouldn't really be involved. At least I haven't met anybody yet that is a 100% investor or a 100% collector. Typically collectors, they want to flip cards, move cards to upgrade their collection. So they might be 80% collector, 20% investor, but that 20% is helping them to evolve their collection and make it larger, or hit on some of those more expensive cards that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. I mean, for me, if there's a $5,000 card that I'm looking at, I don't have any of those, but I'm never going to get there. And plus, I'm not sure if my wife is going to give me, unless it's a Michael Jordan PSA 10 rookie card that I find for $5,000, which probably is a reprint or a fake if it's $5,000. She's not going to, that's going to be a battle for us to be able to make that decision because that's a lot of money. So anyway, point being is that the only way I'm going to get to a PSA 10 Michael Jordan rookie card at some point is working up through sales of cards. So that's that collector versus investor mentality, that we talk about. All right, the first couple of mistakes that I made starting out is chasing auctions. And this can especially be, chasing auction prices. So this can especially be dangerous with, shill bidding, bid rigging. We've seen proof that there are folks out there that are shill bidding, zero feedback accounts that are pushing prices up artificially. And so this is where I would say for people that are just getting in, be extremely careful with this. I wouldn't say this is, I wouldn't say there's an epidemic of shill bidding. I think that especially if it's a more common card, if you're buying base Prism cards, let's just say, use that as an example, there's a lot of transactions going on out there to where, if one is out of the ordinary, you can kind of see, as long as you don't completely skip over sold listings, eBay sold listings or do some comps, you shouldn't get hit on those. For the more rare insert cards, then yeah, absolutely, those types of auctions can be manipulated, and you just have to be real careful with those. But I mean, for the most part, so what I was doing is I'd have a card that I really want, and I'd have a price point in mind, and I'm getting down to the wire. There's 5 minutes left, and we're right there where I want it to be. Maybe I'm winning, maybe I'm a couple dollars off, and I'm going to go ahead and bid on it. And then I get trapped in that, the bid's starting to go up, and it's like I don't want to miss out on it. And then it's also a competitive thing. I don't want to lose this auction. This is my card. I want this card. And that's where, I end up spending $10, $15, $20 more than maybe I should have. And there's instances where that ends up working out anyway. If you really want a card, and even if you're $10 over where you wanted to be, then sometimes that's not a huge deal. If you make a habit of that though, to where you're chasing auctions, and you're always kind of overpaying a little bit, that's just more that you have to make up ground on later if you are looking to flip that card. If it's for your PC, that's one thing. But if you're looking to flip that card and you're coming from an investment standpoint, you have to be extremely careful. You have to be very disciplined, setting that price in your head of like, look, $50 is where it ends for me. A good way to do it too is to go ahead and set your bid, your high bid at $50, forget about it, leave it alone, and then come back. If you won, great. If you didn't, then you didn't. I always do kind of a trick. It's not a trick really, but I'll do $50.33, for example. Because I'm thinking like someone else is going to put $50 and I'm going to lose. It's going to be $50.01. So I put weird numbers in there, odd numbers. So I'll put $74.33 or something like that. $8.33. And so that's where maybe I'll get a victory there where someone just puts 801. It's like that Price is Right thing that we're playing, that game that we're playing. So that's my first one. Don't chase auctions. Just be very, very disciplined with the limited resources that we have. Next, I'm going to talk about one thing I did that, again, I got into the excitement, and this can happen in basketball, football, and I believe there's an element of this in baseball, maybe with like first prospect cards. I don't invest a lot in prospects in baseball, but in football, basketball cards, the draft pick cards will come out of that rookie class, and everyone goes crazy over those draft pick cards. And I was one of those people. I did it in football last year, and I'm buying up autos of draft pick cards right as the season is about to come. So really, for football season, the preseason, from what I've seen, is kind of it's a hype time. It's time where you got training camp, you got preseason games going on, and everyone's getting fired up for the season. So what happens is everyone gets on eBay and they're buying up a lot of cards. Well, I was one of those people, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you can still find some deals, but I was buying up autographs that were expensive, that were graded in college uniforms. And I ended up I sold most of them. I might have a couple of them left, but I ended up either breaking even or taking a small loss on some of those, just because, after you factor in selling fees and everything else, it's just those typically. Now, of course, this trend could change, but once the pro uniforms come out on these rookies, the cards for those, then the draft picks, they fall by the wayside. And you can even see that with the hottest player in football is Patrick Mahomes in his cards, and you can see that with his cards. If you go back to his draft picks cards, those are far less expensive than what he's got now. So I would just say be very careful with that. I was just getting in, and so I'm thinking like, okay, this is a player that's, it's the number 1 overall draft pick, or it's a top 5 pick, and I want to get in on it. And I was so busy trying to get in on the action that I didn't just take the time to just pause and do it that way. I just rushed into it, just through the excitement and through the emotion of all of it. And I was seeing kind of the price, the volatility. I'm like, okay, this actually looks pretty fun, so I want to get involved. Well, I should have done a little bit more research on it. All right, next I'm going to talk about ripping wax and group breaks. So while this is I've done some of this, I know that I've shared this in a lot of my videos. I typically buy single cards, whether it be raw or already graded, just because while I do enjoy the fun of opening packs and opening boxes, it's not from an investment standpoint. The odds are against you. It is a form of gambling. But you can get that huge hit. and I think that's kind of the fun of the chase. So if this is something that you enjoy, that's just fun for you, then that's perfectly fine. I mean, and I think that's part of the hobby that's great. Is breaks are a lot of fun, and group breaks are a lot of fun because you're feeling a part of the community, and there's there's just a fun element to a group break, and I completely understand that. From an investment standpoint, though, I would like to hear from you all actually on this, because if there's viewership here that has a strategy from an investment standpoint, because maybe I'm just missing it. I just feel like the prices of new products are so high these days compared to maybe what they were a few years back, that return on investment on boxes, now maybe if you're buying sealed wax and flipping sealed wax, maybe that's a whole different story. I'm more talking about breaking boxes from an investment standpoint, because maybe there's a strategy to it, and I'm not aware of it. Like I said, I've typically always bought just single cards, whether raw or graded. So I would like to hear though, because maybe that's somewhere where I could learn on a group break. Or buying boxes if there's a strategy, or packs for that matter. If you have kind of a strategy behind that, if you can break down and sell those cards maybe in lots, or you get some wins there. But I would like to hear back from viewership on that, because just from my experience, from what I've seen, I would just much rather just go out and buy those cards of the players that I'm targeting, as opposed to buying packs from an investment standpoint, to get gains there. So let me know what you think on that though, because I would say it's a mistake, I guess, if you get too heavy into group breaks from an investment standpoint. I don't think that over time that's going to be a winning strategy. I could be wrong though, and I'd like to hear from you all. Over the last couple years, a big strategy of people is to take raw cards and get them graded, and then resell them. And of course, if you look at, even if you get a PSA 9, there is typically a huge increase in price. So, if you're able to get a raw card for $5 to $10, you spend maybe $15 to get it graded. So maybe you're $20, $25 in on that card, and you get a PSA 10, you can sell it for $100. Then that's a great return. I think that's something that a lot of new people get into, or people that are just thinking from an investment standpoint. They think that every modern card, and what I mean is every card that was printed in the last 5 years, let's just say, is going to get a 9 or a 10. So it's like, worst case scenario, I'll get a 9. I keep seeing more and more, PSA bulk submissions coming back in, where there's literally a card that's a year old that's getting a PSA 5 or 7 or an 8. And that's almost not even worth. It's almost you may as well almost just break it out of the case and sell it raw at that point. Especially at 5 or 6 on a modern card, it's crazy. So you just never know. The print run, the way that's printed, it could just be got cut weird. It's off centered really badly. You never really know. And so if you think about the investment that you're going to make into grading cards, it's not cheap. If you send in 50 cards, 100 cards, you're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars, maybe even in the thousands, on grading fees alone. So, do you win more than you lose? Maybe / probably. And again, I would like to hear from the viewership on this, because I'm not a big grader. I haven't gotten into it, and so that's something where that could be something that you guys, just as far as, and I know there's a lot of success stories, but I would also like to hear hey, here's a time where I sent in 100 cards and 50 of them came back differently than what I thought. So I think that the folks that are really doing it right either are going through a local card shop, someone that they trust, because a lot of what's really kind of nice, there's resources out there, local card shops that will actually look at cards for you, or I think there's some online resources as well to where you can send them in, and they will tell you like, hey, this is not going to get a 10. This is these 25 cards are not going to get a 10. Not worth sending it in. But that can save you a ton of time and a ton of money. And so so use somebody, kind of have an advisor to help you out there at your local LCS, or you can invest in, they've got like high-end magnifying tools, and they've also got centering tools online for cards that can be very helpful. I haven't used them yet, but I have, other creators have posted videos about them, how they've had success with them, and they look to be very useful and not very expensive. So if you're going to undertake that yourself, I don't think it hurts to get the centering tool, get the magnifying glass, make sure the centering looks right, or not the centering, but the surface with the magnifying glass, because from what I've heard, that's where a lot of things get missed. You can see corners, you can see edges. The centering tool will help you out, but it's surface stuff that can be the difference between an PSA 8.9 or a PSA 10. So make sure you catch all the surface stuff, with that magnifying glass, or try to anyway, and that can help your chances. Don't forget about opportunity cost with all this stuff. For every amazing card that you see that you fall in love with, there's another amazing card that's out there. The inventory is massive on this stuff. I mean, you can literally just go through, there's so many different options. So I would say really get strategic on the sets and the players that you're looking at, because you can easily get carried away on eBay. Just spending a little bit of time, you can just blow all your money, all your resources. It's very easy to do. So opportunity cost is huge. If you spend $100 on this particular card, that's $100 that could have gone somewhere else. So you have to be really strategic to think about which cards. Also, if you are just starting out and you're looking to flip to grow, you don't have a lot of disposable income. Think about the players that that may have an ability to flip. For example, playoff basketball is coming up. We know that. We know that the basketball season is coming up at the end of July. We know there's going to be a playoff. And we know that based on which teams are doing well in the playoffs, you can probably anticipate a price bump on those players. So, and yes, some of these players are already going to have some built-in bumps. There's probably some LeBron, that's pricing that's already kind of built in for him to have some success. They're obviously a top 1, 2, 3 seed in the West. So, there's high expectations, for certain players. But then you think about kind of those ancillary, type players. Like I've talked about Porzingis for the Mavs, and the Mavericks are kind of one of those. Of course, Luka's hot, but what are they, the 7, 8 seed in the West? No one's expecting them to win a title. So if they are able to get through that first round, if they can get to the second, third, if they get to the semis or even the finals, I'm excited to see what happens with pricing there because that is not expected out of the West. There's just a lot of good teams in the West. So, that's kind of the big thing is don't forget about, opportunity cost, and, think about if you need to flip, think about what's coming next, as opposed to maybe buying that Joe Montana rookie card, which might go up. It very well could go up here in the next few months. But the reality is with a lot of vintage cards, those are kind of incremental gains over time is what I've seen from vintage. So those are more long-term holds. So if you've got a certain amount of money, maybe it's best to go with, some of these players that you think are going to be, good playoff players, as opposed to, that vintage card. The vintage card certainly, will be around to get later. And not to say you shouldn't get them now, but that's just something to think about. If you have limited resources, which many of us do, I'm one of them, I've got to think about what's a card that could possibly move over the next 6 months, and that's kind of where I make some of those buying decisions, along with, some of my long-term holds. So I've got a certain percentage where, they're going to be long-term holds, and I've got a certain percentage that are, within 90 days, within 6 months, I would like to try to move them. And we kind of go from there. So guys, I hope this helped. Some of these mistakes that I made, I'm just trying to pass them along to help newer people that are getting in, and maybe some people that have been in for a little while. But a lot of these, again, are things that you've probably already heard or doing yourself. But hopefully some of this could be helpful. If you haven't already subscribed, we have over 100 videos now on sports card investing, and we're keeping them coming every single day. I've got another one that should be coming out later today. So we will keep them coming, and we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks very much.